It's the first day of trading. This is it, Malaysia. We've seen the election being won by the Pakatan Harapan government, and right now we are considering it to be the first day of business. There's a lot and plenty to unpack today. Just today alone, we've seen Nurul Izzah confirming that Anwar Ibrahim will be released tomorrow following a Pardons Board meeting, of which we've also seen Tun Dr. Mahathir giving a press conference earlier today stating that the Attorney General is on vacation currently, is on leave, and replacing him is the Solicitor General. There's also two other resignations coming along. Tan Sri Shahid Samad, the chairman of FELDA, is being asked to go, and of course the other resignation that we saw was the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission. He has also resigned, the chief of MACC. So that's just on the resignation and hiring and releasing part. On the markets, today we've seen quite a very volatile market performance. As at 4:30, the market is up 23% with 23 points, 1.25% up. We've seen about over 6 billion ringgit worth of shares being traded, close to 6 billion shares also being traded. Some early gainers include Sapura Energy, Eden, Berjaya Corp. Many of these companies are linked to Tun Mahathir and Tun Daim for that matter. And companies that are linked with the previous government have also seen to be taken quite a hit. This includes CIMB. They are down quite substantially. Of course, Gamuda as well. All of them are down about 6%. Gamuda is down as well, about 8%. So, like I said, plenty to unpack. Joining me here are two very esteemed guests of mine, both of them from Standard Life Aberdeen. On my left is Gerry Ambrose, the CEO of Aberdeen Asset Management. Welcome to the show, Gerry. You are based, of course, here in Kuala Lumpur. And to his left is Martin Gilbert, the very esteemed CEO of Standard Life Aberdeen PLC. Again, a treat to have both of you. More so, Martin, because Gerry, I know where you live. So, again, guys, thank you for joining me today. We'll start with Gerry. We've seen the euphoria, having been subsided at least a little bit yesterday, but it picked up again. There's a lot of enthusiasm. There's a lot of people commenting on the markets this morning. We've seen it swing quite heavily. In fact, the biggest swing that we've seen in the past 3 years. Could you comment from a perspective of investor, local investor, how do you read this scenario happening right now?
To see turnover of, what, 6 billion ringgit with another half hour to go looks pretty positive to me, and plenty of volatility is a positive for the market. But I don't think anybody would have dreamt on Thursday, when the results of the election were out and the exchange-traded fund for Malaysia in the US was trading down 8%, that you're going to see a market up 21 points by the end of the day. It's a huge positive, and that two-day break after the elections, followed by the weekend, gave people here in Malaysia and people overseas to have a good think about what the effects of the election results would be, and they seem to have come out positively. Inevitably, you're going to see some companies that maybe have been bought up or in anticipation of various measures such as the large infrastructure projects coming off quite a bit. And I think you mentioned CIMB identified with the previous government. I don't think they are identified with the previous government, but there are similar names, but it's naturally going to be a short-term casualty.
Okay, I just want to bring Martin into the conversation because you are based in the UK. You view the emerging markets with a very close eye. There's a lot of multi-asset strategies that you're employing here in Malaysia and, of course, in Southeast Asia as well. How do you view, as a foreign investor, the current developments that are happening here in Malaysia?
Well, I think the great thing is it takes away one of the main reasons that foreign investors have been cautious about Malaysia in the past. And in emerging markets, if there's a reason not to invest in a cement company in one, there's always another cement company and another you can invest in. So I think that's the main positive that comes out of it. And I think foreign investors will look afresh at Malaysia with the cheaper ringgit, the perception that the corruption in the previous government has gone. I think it's all very positive for the future.
A fund manager earlier today commented and was quoted on Bloomberg saying that there are two ways of looking at this. The bear investor would be looking at exiting some of the holdings right now because of the perceived notion that it's linked to other companies. Whereas the bull investor is now currently thinking the same way you are right now. The strategy is it's cheap, it's new government, a government that is perceived to be tough on integrity, and they want to catch all the wrongdoings that have been done by the previous government. Can we talk a little bit more on that? Let's talk about the companies that are currently in the scope right now, including that of Gamuda, including that of, say, MyEG and so on.
Right. Well, I would say that, you know, the bear case, you'd have to be quite a pessimist to see the elections and 4 days of absolutely no trouble, the transition happening apace, but with complete transparency. We're seeing news about the release of Tan Sri Anwar Ibrahim and people being put in place in the cabinet, the group of elders, the various state Menteri Besar being put in place. It all seems to be so calm and so organised. I was mentioning to Martin earlier on, there was more trouble after the Brexit vote than there has been here in Malaysia after 61 years of one coalition being in charge. So you've got to be positive on it, I think.
Martin, are you surprised at the peaceful transition of it? Because here we are suffering from double shocks, not just the shock loss of Barisan Nasional after 60 years, but even a more shocking, peaceful transition of power.
Yeah, I am surprised. I thought there would be some unrest. I think a very wise decision was to make Friday and Saturday a holiday, because that took a lot of the heat out of the situation.
The Thursday and Friday holiday.
Thursday and Friday, yeah. And then we'd Saturday, Sunday. So to a certain extent, we've had 4 days of people getting used to it. So I think it's been positive, yeah. And I'm surprised, though.
Mm-hmm. We have here a clip of the daughter of Anwar Ibrahim. He's speaking a little bit in detail about the terms of the release of Anwar Ibrahim. Let's take a look.
Okey, saya pendek saja. Saya nak maklum pada semua pihak media. InsyaAllah saya diberitahu oleh Peguam Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim bahawa pertemuan the Pardons Board atau Jawatan Kuasa Pengampunan akan berlangsung. Lembaga pengampunan berlangsung jam 5 petang esok. Maksudnya it's not going to be happening in the morning. Have your breakfast, be comfortable, and please don't block patients from coming in. I beg you. We have many patients needing physiotherapy. You can wait in the room there. I think they've also prepared for you. But as it stands, 5 p.m. is only the beginning of the Pardons Board, Pardons Committee session. We will have to wait several hours. I'm not being informed further details, but please don't block the entrance, okay? I don't know. Like I said, we are tied to the procedural matters. I tell you what I know, and that is as far as I know. Thank you. As I said, these are normal procedural matters. He's been with the prison for 11 years of his life. I mean, in total. I think we have made a few friends along those years. Sorry? Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. I don't know, because I don't know what time it will be finished. So I tell you what I know. He certainly will make a press conference. I mean, you guys have been waiting. You guys have been giving coverage. We appreciate it. That's why I'm also addressing all of you with the information that is at hand. But the meeting will start at 5 p.m, so we can assume it will take considerable time.
So that is the conversation that Nurul Izzah has. Just to recap, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim currently is in hospital rehab Cheras, seeking treatment there. While he is seeking treatment there, he has been visited by numerous leaders right now, including that of Muhyiddin and Tun Mahathir himself over the weekend. So we now know that Anwar Ibrahim's release is imminent. The question that is on everyone's mind is on his transition to take over the premiership, and when it will happen, how it will happen, what does this mean with the Deputy Prime Minister, his wife Wan Azizah, plenty of uncertainties there. These kind of things, does it worry you both locally and internationally in terms of investor relations?
From an international perspective, it doesn't. I think he was always highly respected, and from an international point of view, people did understand why he was in prison. They didn't agree with him being in prison. When he was the Minister of Finance, he was highly respected globally I'm old enough to remember when he was Minister of Finance. So, you know, he is a respected leader. So I think his release and whatever position he takes up in a government would be welcome.
So this is something that foreign investors are currently looking forward to. Can I assume that?
Yeah, because you know it was always as I said, it was always a mystery to us why he was in prison. Well, it wasn't a mystery. We knew why he was in prison, because he was probably too dangerous not to be. Yeah, no, he's respected, and it will be positively regarded.
What about you, Gerry? What do you think about the whole Anwar release being ASAP, basically, under a week after the elections being won?
It's happening pretty quickly, isn't it? It is really pretty confusing in a way, but and there's many a slip between cup and lip, you know, between his being released, then I think he has to win a by-election before he eventually becomes Prime Minister, so who knows what happened. But I think one change is that people realise that he has the Dr. Mahathir and Tan Sri Anwar Ibrahim have the support of the vast majority of Malaysians with them, and if somebody tries to derail the plan of things, there are people around who stop it happening. There's stories about, you know, not civil arrests, but people with social media being what it is now, being aware of things developing very quickly to try and cut off justice or things happening in the way it should be planned. So that looks very encouraging, and it's all happening without any trouble. It's remarkable.
And of course, the key feature in the announcement of the new government is an extremely small cabinet being announced, with the initial 10 being announced first, of which only 3 have been named. So what is being the central focus right now is what they call the Jedi Council, the Council of Eminent Persons, so-called, and it's filled with very illustrious individuals. Some of them have been around for decades, assisting Mahathir in his previous time as premiership. This includes Zeti and Daim and many others, right? Do you welcome this whole Council of Elders entering the cabinet sphere?
I think everybody does, yes. I know that Tun Daim was finance minister, but I don't think he was ever seen as a politician. I don't think Tan Sri Hassan Merican is seen as a politician, and Tan Sri Dr. Zeti also not a politician. So to have people above the fray like that, with huge experience and huge international respect, is a very positive development. The smaller the cabinet, the better. Malaysia did tend to have a tendency to have towards the larger cabinet. So I think to have the key people appointed for the time being, and to ask for representatives from each constituent party to be nominated is a very good thing.
How does this play out with you, Martin? We have the cabinet, which is the authorized, officially elected, sanctioned by the lower house, by the people of Malaysia, and you got these 5 guys plus 2 ladies. So these 5 individuals, trying to wield their influence to the cabinet. Does that play well?
Yeah, I think so. Especially Zeti. I mean, Zeti's globally known as one of the longest-serving central bank governors in the world. I think, if not the longest-serving, highly respected globally. So I think, again, for the foreign exchange markets, which, at the end of the day, are absolutely crucial. I think Zeti being appointed to this this Council of Elders is a very reassuring thing for global investors.
And this is the part where I put you in a spot. We have certified reports saying that Tun Daim and Tan Sri Zeti is meeting a bunch of fund investors tomorrow at Bank Negara early in the morning. What kind of thoughts are going through your mind in terms of this meeting? What are the things that you plan to discuss, or the outcomes that you expect?
I think it's more what's on their mind, and I think what will be on their mind are the foreign exchange markets and the government debt market. At the end of the day, the equity market looks after itself; it'll find its level. But the foreign exchange and the price of the cost of borrowing money is crucial for Malaysia, and so therefore it's good to see the government the government bond stabilizing the 10-year. I think up a few basis points or whatever. I haven't seen the latest trading price. But I think remarkably stable, I think, is the very positive outcome.
So, Gerry, are you meeting Tan Sri Zeti and Tundaim tomorrow?
Well, not a one-on-one, I don't think, but we have been invited, I presume along with a lot of other fund managers, to
That's true,
attend a
actually,
briefing
a lot of
to
other
try and get the feelings and everybody's thoughts on the way ahead for capital markets, from the buy side, from the sell side. Yesterday, I believe it was the turn of the government-linked investment companies, who all had a session, and the aim is to, do what the people want and to have full transparency.
What do you think people want, honestly? I mean, as an investor, I'm not talking about the populist measures like, oh, get rid of the GST, fix the oil petrol price and stuff like that. Honestly, as an investor, what do you think people want?
They want a well-run country.
Right.
They want it to be run sensibly, honestly, not go for 8% growth one year and 3% the next. Steady growth over a long period of time, and there's no country better positioned than Malaysia to give that.
What do you think, Gerry?
Well, I'm just trying to think in my head, comparing the situation now, the political fluidity since Wednesday last week, and say the crisis back in 97, 98. And the real difference is that Malaysia's economy is doing pretty well, and we're benefiting partly by luck, perhaps, from higher commodity prices. We've got strong external demand. We have a very strong manufacturing sector downstream from the natural commodities we've got, but also in the electronics and electrical sector. Things are looking pretty good. But what I think people want is that when Malaysia says that our current account surplus will be X, that it is a genuine number. We don't want to go down the route of some emerging economies where people start to doubt the data a little bit. So I think with this start, it's very positive.
In fact, I'm still going to focus on that, right? Are people doubting the data? Because if you look at the top line numbers, it's pretty impressive. BN keeps on saying that the World Bank has to revise the growth outlook for the country 3 times. The final figure was 5.9%, which was still higher than the World Bank's estimates. That was kept on repeated during the campaign period. Of course, the other rosy picture that the former Prime Minister keeps on spelling out, and that people don't really buy into those arguments, and the proof is in the pudding. They voted him out, and quite substantially. It's not even a narrow loss. It's a substantial loss. So because of this, do you think that Tun Mahathir really has a lot to live up to, because people really want so much from the government? And yes, we've seen so much things happening right now, but on a medium term, can he really deliver that, say, 100-day promises that is found within his manifesto?
Well, certainly, I think there were some doubts about the authenticity of some numbers, and a lot of overseas economists have been questioning national debt, and a lot of it being contingent liabilities, etc. That's one uncertainty that I think they need to clarify. But on the whole, I think that the market's in a good position. Yeah.
All right. Let's fall back to what Martin said just now in terms of the debt capital markets. Fitch and Moody both have said that the sovereign rating is currently going to be held at its present position until further information is made known. This includes the policy that is being introduced by the Finance Ministry, as well as the newly created but not yet named Minister of Economy. We don't know how this interplay will work between the Finance Ministry and the Economy Ministry, and the scope and powers of each, of either. With these kind of things still being developing, and you're a big bond player, both domestically and regionally, and you have, been a good partner to EPF and Co-op. How do you expect this kind of relationship to move forward ahead, considering that so many unknowns are still developing right now?
I think the government will be given time to sort things out. As long as you're heading in the right direction in bond markets, that's the key. It's the direction of travel that really matters. So I think the rating agencies are quite right to leave the rating at the moment. It's what sort of watch they've put Malaysia on, and they'll take their time before doing that. But no, certainly the government will be given time to sort things out.
Yeah, we're a small economy, like most of the ASEAN economies. So, you know, if there is a loss of faith in the financial statements or the trade data, it is, as we have seen in the past, there is always a danger that people run for the door. That's foreign investors and some local investors. So that's something that I am absolutely sure that the Council of Elders is very aware of. And I forgot to mention, is it Datuk Sri Jomo?
KS Jomo.
Well, KS Jomo.
Yeah.
And also
he's a professor,
Robert
I'm
Kwok.
not too sure of the title, yeah.
You know, these people have got huge experience and very strong relationships and respect throughout Asia and in the world. So I don't think you could get a better start from that point of view, but the answer is to keep the faith.
Okay, so speaking of which, we now know the 10 figures of the government, the 5 ministers and the 5 elder leaders. And they're not exactly friends. I mean, you know, Dr. Mahathir has jailed Muhammad Sabu. He has jailed Lim Guan Eng. We're talking the 80s, right, and 90s.
And Ibrahim too.
And Ibrahim too, right? Yeah, I mean, this is an outright jail. And of course, at that moment in time, he has used the facilities that were made available to him as Prime Minister. They went through the due process, the courts found them guilty, and off they go in jail. KS Jomo has went on very vocally, opposed Mahathir's economy policies back when Mahathir was running this country in the late 80s and 90s. He has said in his book very critically of what was going wrong with Mahathir's administration, and this includes having a big government, this includes too much centralization in the Ministry of Finance, and so on and so on. Long story short, they don't really agree with each other over the longest of time.
So there are checks and balances. You know, there are very important people like Robert Kwok and others who will not put up with the current Prime Minister perhaps having a style that he had when he was in charge last time. That sort of authoritarian style has changed. I'm no expert, but I've just seen over the run-up to this election and in the years running up to this election that the Prime Minister has, Dr. Mahathir has realised that the old way doesn't work going forward.
Right. In fact, he has taken quite painstakingly expressed numerous times over the past 3 or 4 days the method of reaching a decision. He has again and again explained that this is through consultative measures. People are being, the respective Council of Presidents, the President of the 4 parties and him has sat in a council to decide each and every single matter. This is consultative and it's good. But does this slow the decision-making process, particularly when you know that sometimes markets move fast?
Yeah, I suspect it does slow it, but it means that bad decisions will hopefully not be made.
Yeah, okay. Big sort of political deal making. There's always some worries that this is going to happen. I think in Borneo, I'm allowed to speak a little bit more freely now than I used to. Some of the politicians are famous for sort of moving across a little bit. I wouldn't like to see big sort of financial or sort of power bargaining deals struck there in order to get a larger majority or whatever. And I think that this Council of Elders would not approve of that either. So to have these 5 Council of Elders keeping charge over somebody who's even older than they are, the Prime Minister, is quite a good thing.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the developments that are happening at the state level. We've seen Barisan Nasional only retaining a very few handful of states. Many of others have moved on to the Pakatan Harapan, who is now the government. The conversation is on the interplay between the federal government and the level of involvement that they have in terms of investment with the state. Gerry, what do you think will happen in this regard?
Well, I think some projects like water supply have been held up a little bit by some conflicts between the federal government and the state, and the change in the way the ownership of the treatment companies works, which has been a great cause of concern for people in greater Kuala Lumpur, because if we keep on going on with this conflict, there is a danger that we're going to run out of water, which is crazy for a country where it rains quite so much. So I think there has to be a lot more openness, and in the case of Sabah and Sarawak, and also Terengganu, there has to be some deal by which the state get a decent allocation, whereas before I just got the impression that there was quite a lot of conflict with the federal government on that point. But more than that, I'm not an expert.
Okay, let's talk about the continuity of government in terms of the people in power. We've seen again today when we started the show, the AG has been asked to step aside, MACC, the chief of corruption, has been asked to resign. Felda, a big problematic company through its listed company FGV as well, has gone through numerous problems over the past few years. Again, all this leads to poor management. Some of them have committed crimes, outright corruption. In fact, Tun Mahathir earlier on in this earlier today through a PC have stated that there are plenty of wrongdoings that the previous government have done. They are now launching investigation against many of these. Now, these individuals and many more that will come after them in terms of resignation, they hold sizable power and responsibility. With them gone, do you think that there will be a stuttering in terms of how the country is run, from institutional and governmental organizations to businesses?
Well, I think it's very important that these people are looked at in a fair and open manner, and that the government and the institutions of justice are completely transparent and perhaps to some extent magnanimous about it. It's very easy for a country where there's been a pretty radical change, as has happened here over the past 5 days, for the rakyat or people to get emotions to get on top of you, and they get hostility in the streets, and things getting a little bit hysterical. Now, so far, we've seen absolutely none of that, which is fantastic. But, there is a danger that, I'm not saying we could go down the road of Romania or Libya or whatever, but there's always a danger of that sort of Arab Spring getting people's rational thinking getting affected by emotions.
Martin, the emerging markets sometimes are very, very lucrative to get in. The pricing could be very, very well cheap as well to do business there. Of course, not many of these emerging market countries are, how should I say, rosy democracies. They may have some trouble in terms of how information is shared, how high the media freedom is. Malaysia was that country before. How does this change your strategy in terms of investing in a highly desirable market like Malaysia with greater transparency and greater scrutiny?
Yeah, I think first of all, Malaysia should be pretty proud of itself having this historic vote, which shows, I think, a level of maturity that perhaps has surprised even Malaysia itself and surprised the world. So I think that's all a positive, which makes it more attractive for foreign investors. As I said right at the beginning, the previous government was a reason that perhaps people didn't invest for either perceived or real reasons. So I think it's definitely made definitely made it more attractive, because a democracy is, especially one with a good rule of law, especially when you're in the bond markets, you do need a good legal system, that you do have redress against companies in the bond markets. Equities, as I say, they take care of themselves to a certain extent. You can buy and sell them more easily. But bonds are very much more an area that you're looking for a strong legal system, which there is here in Malaysia.
The previous Barisan National Government had very, very close ties with China. Many mega projects are currently tied with them. Do you think that the fact that Mahathir has stated explicitly through a press conference saying that any conversation with China right now must be reviewed, contracts must not be lopsided, all this review must be put in process, does this worry you that Malaysia will sever ties with China?
I think, you know, China's an amazing country. We find it difficult sometimes to find really good investments there because of corporate governance, but there are some very, very good companies there. But I think the Belt and Road Initiative globally is a fantastic development. I think the key is not to become overly dependent on any one country. And I suspect that's what Dr. Mahathir is worried about, is that Malaysia gets into the pocket of China. And of course, China sees Belt and Road as a global initiative to exert influence globally. So I think it's a bit like in the UK with the nuclear plants and so on. The government always wants to take a step back and look at it and make sure they're making the right decision. So I welcome his thoughts on, or I think he's sensible actually looking at it properly.
Yeah, I think the market's assuming that all deals involving foreign funding or foreign project management are going to be off the table. I don't think that's true. I think that the government wants to make sure that all deals are at arm's length, that the intention of China is to improve the network throughout Asia through this one belt, one road system, and not to have any agenda or any sort of corruption in the awarding of the contracts, etc. So all things being equal, it could be that all these projects go ahead and the construction companies that have the special skills will win their contracts, which the market isn't taking into account at the moment.
The global community is currently looking at one issue only right now, which is 1MDB. Over the weekend, Tun Dr. Mahathir has said that this issue will be lifted from the Official Secrets Act. People like us can now discuss about it openly. Tun Daim, one of the members of the Council of Elders, said that a special task force will be created to investigate 1MDB. I'm sure this is good news, right?
Definitely. For foreign investors, they want transparency, and this shows the country is prepared to be transparent over an issue that globally was a major issue as far as Malaysia was concerned.
But Tun Mahathir said that he's not out for revenge, but he has so far disallowed Najib and his wife to travel. Doesn't this sound like a little bit of a vindictive, do you think?
I think we need to get to the bottom of it, not getting personal as to who's involved, but it's the Rakyat's money, and I think the Department of Justice has seized some assets valued at, I don't know, so many $1 billion in the United States, and rightfully that belongs to the Malaysian people. So you just need to find out, if there has been underhand goings on. It seems strange that the Swiss Central Bank, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the Australian Central Bank, the US Federal Reserve, the Department of Justice, all seem to be, going through this with a fine-tooth comb. So maybe we have to show that we're arm's length and everything is done impartially, but we do need to get to the bottom of this and a few other scandals, I think, that have been going on.
Yeah, the other scandals are clearly one the case. Of course, we have to wrap this up very quickly, but when I interviewed the Transparency International Malaysia president, he said that we have to also focus on all the other unsolved cases. 1MDB is occupies a frontal lobe, but there's many other scandals that needs to be opened. Do you think that the time is now for us to go after all this unsolved scandals?
Go after sounds a little bit vengeful, so I don't think it needs to be sort of prosecuted in that way. I got a traffic offence when I was meant to be parking on a double yellow line that I convinced I was not there at the time. Yeah. But these things need to happen in a sensible and measured fashion. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Gentlemen, we have to call this, we have to wrap this up, but thank you again for joining me this evening. I've been speaking to Martin Gilbert, the CEO of Standard Life Aberdeen PLC, joining us all the way from the UK for this very special day, the first day markets open. Of course, I have also with me Gerry Ambrose, the CEO of Aberdeen Islamic Asset Management. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm Ibrahim Sani. Thanks again. See you in another time.
Thank you, Ibrahim.